Welcome dear students to Introduction to Programming, and I have already opened Qt Creator, the software we use for writing code. So I'm going to create a new project and I'm going to call this project input and array because I want to demonstrate that how can we take input from the user to fill in the array with values. I'm going to click next button couple of times and then finally click finish. I am going to clean up the code and I'm going to remove these command line arguments because we don't need them. And then in the main function I'm going to create an array. The type of the array is going to be int, so it's going to store only integers, and the name of the array is numbers, and I'm going to specify the size of the array to be 5. This means that this array can only store 5 integers. Then I'm going to come here and write a comment, take input from user using the for loop, right? But before that, let me show you something else. If we don't use the for loop, what's going to happen, right? Take input from user. So we are going to say cout, enter an integer, and then cin, and then the name of the array, which is numbers, and then the square brackets, and within the brackets I have to specify 0, which is the first location of the array, and I want to store something, but I want to take input from the user. That's why I'm using the cin statement. So whatever the user type on the keyboard, some integer value, cin is going to take that value, right, that value, and store it in this particular location of the array. That means the very first index. Then if I want to take input for the second value, then I'm going to simply say increment the index plus 1. So I'm going to say 1, right? And if I have to do it again for the third index and the second index and the fourth index, Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V. Now you already might have noticed that if the size of the array, for example, is 1 billion or 1 million, then we have to write cin and cout statement. How many? Almost 1 million or billion, depending on the size of the array. So this worked, but this is not the correct solution. I mean, it's tedious and it's almost impossible for an array of size 1 million. Let's first give it a try. So I'm going to say cout numbers 0, and whatever we provided is going to be displayed on screen, right? And then we can use the same structure and say space and then numbers 1. So for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to just print the values of the first 2 locations of the array, right? So I'm going to save changes and I'm going to run the program and first compile it just to see if we've made any syntax errors. And as you can see on the bottom right of this IDE, the green line, which means there are no syntax errors in our program. So I'm going to click this play button, which is a run button, and run the program. And it says enter an integer, and I'm going to say 100 and press enter, and then it's going to say enter another integer, so 200. It's going to take 5 values from user. This is the last value, and if I hit enter on the keyboard, the last statement will be executed and we'll just see the values that we stored on the first 2 locations of the array. So if I hit enter on the keyboard, you see 100 and 200. The problem with this code is, of course, if the size of the array is 1 million, then we have to write the cout cn statement pair almost 1 million times. So it's not practical and nobody's gonna do that. This is just for the sake of demonstration that if we do not use the loop for taking input from the user, what problem can we get into? So let me remove everything and use a for loop to take input from the user, right? And we're gonna say for I equals 0, sorry, control Z, I equals 0, control Z, I equals 0, I is less than size of the array, right? So size is 5. So we have to go up to 4 because we start with 0. And then after that, we are going to come here and say cout value, integer value, right? Every time the loop runs, this statement is going to be executed, and then we are going to provide the value from the keyboard, and cn is going to store that in the numbers I, right? So what I did here, that I'm using the for loop, and I start the counter variable, which is I in this case, to 0, and the condition is checked, 0 is less than 5. So when it evaluates to true, the code will come down here in the body of the for and execute this statement, and we will see on the screen integer colon space. That means type an integer, right? And to make it even more user friendly, we can do something like type an integer, and then whatever the user types on the keyboard, cn is going to store that value in numbers I. Numbers subscript I means numbers 0, because the first time the value of I will be 0, and numbers I or number 0 represent the first location of the array. So that value will be stored in the first location of the array. Then the I++ will be executed, and the value of I will be incremented by 1. So I becomes 1. It was 0 before, and 1 is less than 5, true. So again the body of the for loop will be executed. So the first statement in the body is cout. We'll again see the message type integer colon, and after that we are going to type a value, and that value will be stored in numbers index 1, which is the second location. And then again I will be incremented by 1, so I becomes 2, 2 less than 5, and then numbers 2, and similarly 3. And when the value of I becomes 5, 4 and 4 plus 1, 5, 5 is less than 5, no, the condition is false. In that case, the body of the for loop will not be executed, and the code after the for loop will be executed if there is any statement. So I am going to type here the end of the program, just so that you see that the program ends, right? So this program will only take input from the user, and how many values? 5 values, right? So let me compile the program, and there are no errors, as you can see on the right bottom of the screen. I'm going to run the program, and it says type in integers, so I'm going to say 100, then again. The loop is going to execute 4 times, starting from 0 up to 4, and then the program ends, and we don't see the values we provided because we have to create another for loop to display those values. So after we have taken input from the user, we are going to comment now display all the values of the array using for loop. So I'm going to use the same loop again. So I'm going to copy the code from there, Control C to copy, and click here and Control V to paste it. This time we don't want to take input from the user, but we want to display all the values of the array. So I'm going to remove the string, and I'm going to type the name of the array, which is numbers, and then the square brackets, and within the square brackets I'm going to specify the value of I. And each time the loop executes, cout will display the values of the integer array. So we'll see 100 and then 200, and they will be printed on one line because I'm not using endl. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come here and put a comma so that you can see that all the values are comma separated. And then I'm gonna type endl. So let's compile the program and let's run the program. And this time I want to provide different values, so let's set 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and if I hit enter on the keyboard now, this loop, which you can see, the second loop will be executed after the end of the program statement, and we shall see all these values uh, separated with comma, right? So I'm going to hit enter on the keyboard so that you can see the output, and you can see 10, comma 20, comma 30, 40, and up to 50, right? So this is the question asked by one of your student in the group, and this is the answer. Thanks for watching. See you next time.